Welcome to Code 5 Art. Today's a little bit different. I'm going to do a book review. Now, if you get on Amazon and you just want to search for graffiti books, the very first book that comes up is Graffiti School, a student guide by Chris Ganter. And I bought it right away, and I wanted to give a little bit of a review of what I think of it and hopefully give some feedback of what kind of content it has in it, so anyone that's interested in maybe buying it can have a good idea of what they may be buying before they actually pull the trigger on the purchase. This book was published in 2013 and it is now the end of 2020, so this book is roughly 7 years old, and unfortunately things move fast in 7 years. Some of these chapters and some of these topics are a little bit dated, but I still think there's a lot of value in this. So let me just jump into the 5 chapters that this book is broken down into. So this book is broken up into 5 different chapters, and I'm going to go through each and every one of those chapters, and I'm kind of going to give a summary at the end. So stick around to the end where I can give my overall impression of the book, and hopefully it's helpful for anyone that's interested in looking at this book. So the very first chapter is the history of graffiti, and I'm actually kind of surprised by this, but there's only like 9 pages of talking about the history, and what surprised me about the history is that there's only a little bit about what most people call modern graffiti, is like what happened in New York, the explosion in the 80s. But it does talk about graffiti and its origins way before then. So I did learn a little bit of something. However, I wish he would have expanded a little bit more on it, but that's okay. Now, the next chapter, chapter 2, is titled Theory, which I thought was a little bit interesting because it's only 7 pages. It talks more about media, about movies, about magazines, and the internet, which, as I mentioned earlier, this book was written in 2013, and it's a little dated in this respect. The media and social media and just the internet itself has exploded since then. So chapter 2 doesn't bring a lot of value because it's based off of 2013 and things have changed greatly since then. So let's move on. To chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the bulk. It is the heart and soul of this book, I think, and it is about designing graffiti. Now, with designing graffiti, it goes through the evolution of different stages of graffiti. It goes from tags. It starts off with tags and goes through different examples and styles of that. It has some exercises, so you can take a style and start filling in the blocks of what you think that letter should look like given that style. Then it goes on to more like throw-ups and straight letter designs, and it has some really good advice here for anyone that's just beginning with graffiti or is really interested in it. And it talks about the plank rule and how to make sure that the structure of your letters actually makes sense and you don't have any floating pieces. Another good topic that they really talk about is the key areas of letters. Now, you may notice is when it comes down to any sort of style, the common piece that lets a letter A look like a letter A is the key pieces, the little hole in the top and the line down the middle. Anything that surrounds it is the style itself. But as long as you have those key pieces, it makes a letter A the letter A. The book then goes on to many different styles that you can play around with proportions and flow and different effects and just general styles that you can get inspired to for making your own pieces. The next step in the designing graffiti is it starts talking about 3D and blocks, and it does do a good job of explaining 3D, and I've explained that also in a previous video, but this does a good job of explaining what 3D and different blocks do to make them look and flow correctly. The next step, they start talking about color and shading and depth, so it kind of gives you some color examples. And when it comes to color, it talks about different ways to use contrast and different pairings of the colors on the color wheel that could help you in deciding what you want your next piece to be. And then we get to chapter 4, and this is spraying graffiti. So some of the sections that chapter 4 talks about is the anatomy of a spray can, which is not absolutely necessary, but I think it's very helpful to know more about your tools. I mean, if you know what the spray can is doing, you can understand and troubleshoot when things start breaking. Chapter 4 then continues to move on to just like different spraying strategies of like how you can get those thin lines and how you can then get the dusting, and that's all about the depth away from the wall. And it talks about good strategy of like how to get these kind of effects with the spray can. One of the next steps in chapter 4 is about the 6 main steps of putting up a proper piece. Now, this is a topic that I've been wanting to cover for a long time because almost every graffiti artist goes through these 6 main steps in order to make a proper graffiti piece and have them go in the right order. And then when you follow these 6 steps, then you can definitely have the piece come together and everything is orderly and you don't find yourself tripping over your previous mistakes or anything like that. To round off chapter 4, they have a large set of different patterns and different color schemes and fills that you could use. And this is good for like to have good inspiration of how you want to plan your next piece. It has different fades, nebulas, and hard lines over a fade. And it has several pages of these so that you can have a good idea of what you have a good sampler to know what you may want to do for your next piece. Okay, and that brings us to the final chapter, which isn't a large chapter, but it's pretty interesting. It is called the Teacher's Manual, and it talks about how you can go through different lesson plans if you were to teach graffiti to students. And along with the lesson plan, it also talks about how you can give like homework for for graffiti. They have different worksheets that you can fill out to like kind of continuing styles and understanding like the key areas of a letter and like understanding flow and style, how you can like make everything match. And they do have an answer key at the end, which is kind of interesting. And after the teacher's manual, it also has some sample alphabets, which are really nice to go A through Z. But as I'll mention in my summary, it's only so useful because it has maybe 3 or 4 in here. But now you can go to Instagram and find 50 if you want and find inspiration that way. All right, now it's time for my summary of the book. Overall, I think it is a good purchase. I think I only spent like $20 to $30 on this, but I did learn a few things, and I feel like it's a good thing to have for reference. But on the whole, I'm not crazy about a lot of the structure. One of the things that I was kind of upset about is that they do have a lot of, he does have some examples of real pieces by professional graffiti artists, but almost all of them are black and white. There's so many examples of just black and white pieces in here, which I don't understand why you would do that. Why would you have all these examples of magazines and different like pictures of art and paint that are just in black and white? That's like such a waste. It's incredibly frustrating. It's also good to understand when this thing was published, because in 2013, it was only 7 years ago, but because of that, a lot of the information feels dated and honestly not that useful anymore, because if you look at the history, in 2013, that's when Instagram was just starting to ramp up. I think they had like 90 million monthly users, and now they have many billions of monthly users. And with that has come an entire world culture of graffiti where you can follow 200 to 500 different accounts that have different styles, and you can learn from them themselves. This book is referencing a lot of movies from the 80s and magazines like Can anyone in the audience, can any of my viewers remember the last time they bought like a magazine, let alone a graffiti magazine? I bet some have, but with that, it's not really that useful anymore. You can find almost all of your information and content on the internet right now. So in summary, again, I think it's a good purchase. Not everything is going to be perfect, but there's always areas where you can learn. And I feel like this is a good basic covering of a lot of the fundamentals of graffiti. All right, so that's all I had for the book review. I hope I brought some value of explaining a broad overview of like all the 5 chapters and my own personal summary. And so let me know below if you want me to keep on doing some book reviews, because I plan on buying some more graffiti books. So go ahead and just hit the like button and subscribe if you are interested in this kind of content. Let me know down in the comments whether or not this was valuable. And thank you for watching, guys. And I hope you guys have a good day. All right, see ya.